Good day, everybody. I'm in transit to Venus. I'm very excited because today we are going to connect and go beyond with Seth Shostak, the senior astronomer at the SETI Institute in California, on a mission to explore, to understand and explain life, its nature, and its prevalence in the universe. Let's go beyond with Seth Shostak.
Go beyond your horizons.
Here we are with Seth Shostak. Thank you so much, Seth, for connecting today with Volandino's spacecraft in transit to Venus.
Well, yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a fun trip, Volandino.
I think it's going to be, Seth. It's so exciting to connect with you because, you know, for many years I've been a big fan of the SETI Institute. All the scientific and educational activities of the SETI Institute and yourself. So really, what a great pleasure to have you with us. So we're going to go in this little adventure through some topics that will interest a lot of people in our audience. So let me begin with recently, in an interview, you actually said that because of the speed at which computational power is increasing with the years, you think that you actually bet a cup of Starbucks to everybody that by 2036 maybe we will establish a first contact with another intelligent civilization. So my question to you is, so the computational power is increasing, doubling every couple of years. Now, I work a lot myself in artificial intelligence and machine learning and deep learning. Do you think, two questions. The first one, do you think, what is the role of deep learning, machine learning, AI in the SETI search? Is it already being applied a lot? Do you think that in the next years, deep learning will be able to speed up even more the interpretation, the finding of these hidden patterns in the data? And with all of that, tell us a bit more about this 2036 bet. I mean, why do you think that we may arrive by then to that first contact?
Well, the speed of SETI searches depends on the equipment. Doesn't depend so much on the people because everything's run automatically anyhow. But it does depend on the computers. And one thing that having more computers will do for you, it allows you to look at more of the radio spectrum at a given time. So you spend less time checking out each star system. So that speeds up the search. And if you plot up the improvement in speed over the past 60 years, you know, it just follows Moore's law. In other words, it doubles about every 2 years. And that's just the improvement in computers. Now, machine learning, that sort of technique, is being applied for some SETI searches. University of California, Berkeley is certainly using it. And the advantage of it is that you always pick up signals. Every 10 seconds you pick up signals. But those are all due to, so far, they're all due to telecommunication satellites or radar or something like that. And the machine learning devices can sort that out much more quickly than humans can. So that will also speed up the search.
Okay. Yeah. You detect signals more often, and then I guess the ability of AI to classify as well those signals will help a lot, I guess. But yeah, that brings me to another question that I was going to ask you later on, but actually because of what you said, I'm going to bring it forward now. For the audience to understand the difficulty of this challenge, what percentage, when we look at the observable universe, at the sky, what percentage of all those galaxies and stars that we can see are you guys really analyzing?
Well, it's a very small fraction, a terribly small fraction. The total number of star systems that have been looked at just in the Milky Way galaxy, in our own galaxy, is, maybe 5 or 10,000. That's the maximum number so far.
Wow.
And the galaxy has, several 100,000 million star systems. And there are, several hundred, well, there are actually a million other galaxies that we can see with our telescope. So it's essentially a minuscule fraction of the star systems that we could look at. But we do tend to look at the closest stars.
Uh-huh. You tend to look at the closest ones.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, because then the signals might be stronger, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's more possibilities. So considering the little percentage that you guys are analyzing, I mean, you are still optimistic that with the doubling of computation every couple of years, by the 30s, 40s, 2030, 2040, we do have a chance to establish a first contact?
Yeah, because by that time, the equipment will have improved to the point that we will have been able to look at about 1 million star systems, not 5 or 10,000. And, I think 1 million might be the right number.
Okay, so that is the Goldilocks, the magic sweet spot, the million. All right. So now, going back to the data and the AI, the finding of the hidden patterns. Everybody's heard about the famous WOW signal in 1977. So I'm wondering, because you scientists, you always wait when you find the signal. First of all, you have to, find the evidence and check it from different angles. So I wonder, during all of these years, Seth, I'm sure that there has probably been other very interesting signals that probably no one of us knows about, but that you guys never revealed because you just don't find enough evidence, right? Enough proof. It must be really hard to take those decisions, right? What signal is worth talking about and which one not?
Well, it's true that there have been other signals that were found only once. That was very common back in the 1970s and 1980s, because there was no way to follow up immediately. If you found a signal, you would find it weeks after you had observed it. So that didn't really help much. I mean, you get back home and you play a tape and you find some signals, but you're not at the telescope anymore, so you can't reobserve them. So it's, again, an improvement mostly in computers. Nothing was kept secret about these things. They were all published. Yeah. But they were like the WOW signal. They were seen once and never again, even though people went back and looked many times.
Okay, so if you found another WOW signal tomorrow in these times, now it would be much easier to track it.
Yes, it would be looked at again within minutes. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's a big improvement. Okay, now if we ever establish that first contact, you've talked, for example, about technosignatures. That is a very interesting topic. Technosignatures. How do you think will be that the most likely that first contact? Will it be by us finding some technosignature in some atmosphere or planet, or what do you think will be the shape of that first contact?
Well, technosignature, I mean, that's become a very au courant term these days. All it means is something that's artificial, right? And a signal, a radio signal, that's at one frequency and not at a lot of other frequencies, not all over the spectrum, that's a technosignature because only transmitters make that kind of signal. So that's what we look for. And it has nothing to do with whether they're sending us the plans for a new cell phone or whatever the information is, because we can't actually pick up the information. That requires a different kind of receiver. But the fact that the signal is, at one particular region on the radio dial in the radio spectrum, that makes it a technosignature. I mean, there are other things that could be technosignatures. For example, if you found something very big in space that was not made by nature, you would consider that a technosignature.
Yeah, I think you mentioned, I don't know if it was you or somebody else that talked about the Egyptian pyramids, right? As a kind of, if you found something like the Egyptian pyramids, that could be like that sort of signature, right?
Well, that's a technosignature if you walk around the deserts of Egypt. Most of it looks pretty uninteresting. But if you find the part where there are some pyramids, you would say, "Oh, that's a technosignature."
Yeah, that's interesting. So do you think that that's the most likely way that we will find an alien civilization, or not? Do you think that?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's almost the only way. We can't go visit them.
Yeah.
And although many people think that they're visiting us, very few scientists believe that. So I think that, yes, just looking for something unusual in the sky, whether it's, some sort of radio signal or flashing laser beams or whatever, or somebody who's rearranged their solar system or rearranged their star system, all of that would indicate that there's intelligence elsewhere.
Yeah, very interesting. And if we established communication with an early civilization, now I'm very interested in the topic of language communication. Sometimes I think with other species on Earth, it's really hard for us to really establish a deep communication with other species on Earth because we don't understand their language and so on and so forth. So if it's so hard for us here on Earth, what are our chances? Do we have any hope that if we ever strike contact with an alien civilization, remotely or otherwise, that we can understand each other deeply?
Well, assuming you can build the technology to get the message. Again,
Yes,
no
true.
SETI experiments today do that. But if you could, then, you could use your computer and learn something about the language the same way that you learned a language when you were a child, right? There were certain words that were repeated over and over, like mama or whatever. And pretty soon you know what that means.
Yeah.
And the same thing would happen, except you would use computers to do, if you will, the listening. And I think you could build up some sort of vocabulary. I think it's possible. But keep in mind that if they're far away, in a way it doesn't really matter because you could talk back to them, but it might take, hundreds, even thousands of years for your answer to get back to them, and another couple of 100,000 or a couple of 100 or a couple of thousand years for their response to that. So it's very slow communication. It'd be interesting to understand whatever it is, but that's not an easy problem.
Yeah. It is the speed of light is always our obstacle, right? Which brings me back to something I really wanted to ask you. With all this incredible body of experience that you have, that Seth has at the SETI Institute all these years, after all these years, is there anything that you could share, something surprising, something unexpected that you have learned through these years of embarking on this search? Something that through the years you've maybe changed your mind about, or something surprising that comes from all these years of search? Yeah.
Well, I don't think so, except to say this. When SETI was first considered by Frank Drake back in 1960,
Yes.
because nobody had ever looked before, it was possible that all you had to do was aim an antenna at the sky and you would pick up a lot of radio chatter, that there would be a lot of signals flying through space.
Yeah.
But there may indeed be a lot of signals, but they're all weaker than we had anticipated. So, I guess you could say that's one thing we've learned. There aren't lots of very strong radio signals shooting through space.
Interesting. So there are less strong radio signals than anticipated flying through space, which maybe in a way is positive, so that you don't have so much. I mean, in the moment that you really find a signal is something special, because there's not so many of them, I guess. Yeah.
Well, it could be that there are lots and lots of signals, just like there are lots of signals in this room here, due to the cell phone traffic around me, but it's all very weak, so I don't even notice it.
Yeah. Interesting. And if we ever establish that, when we establish that first contact, which for sure we will. Now, do you think that is more likely that we may find a civilization that is way more advanced than us, or that is more or less where we are? What is more?
Well,
likely?
if they're at our technological level, we probably wouldn't hear them.
Oh yeah, that's right, actually.
So I think that it's much more likely they'll be more advanced.
Yeah, that will be way more advanced, very likely. Right? Okay, now, because I'm on transit to Venus, I'm very curious about the phosphine story and everything. Now, what is your take? Obviously, people are very excited. I mean, do you think that is likely that in the next few years, either in Venus or Europa or Titan or Enceladus, that we may find definite proof already of the existence of obviously non-intelligent life, microbial or whatever, in the next few years? What do you think of the phosphine and the rest.
Well, phosphine's a special circumstance because, that's a specific discovery. But keep in mind that there are 7 other worlds in our solar system that are, thought really known to have liquids. There's liquid water under the
7?
surface of Mars. There's Enceladus. There's Titan. There's, Europa. All these places have some sort of liquids. And it seemed that even Venus had some liquids up in its atmosphere, or at least some gases that might support biology. Now, that result is now being questioned because some efforts to find the phosphine spectral signature again have not worked. So something's wrong there.
Really? So they have tried again and they didn't find it?
Oh, yeah. No, immediately you make a discovery like that, and anybody who has a telescope that can be used to verify it will try and do that. But so far, my understanding is that the phosphine gas, the detection of the gas itself, is still somewhat questionable.
Oh.
And if it turns out that there really isn't any phosphine, then the whole interpretation that phosphine signifies some sort of bacterial life in the atmosphere of Venus is probably questionable, which would be a disappointment, I have to say. But that may be the case.
Wow, that's very interesting. So it could be possible that there is nothing there. So in the entire solar system, where would you place your bet as to the most likely place where we may first detect like microbial or that sort of signal life,
Well, certainly the majority of the effort has always been looking for life on Mars. But a NASA researcher who has spent his life looking for life on Mars told me not too long ago, maybe a year or two ago, he said he switched his favorites now. And rather than looking for life on Mars, he's betting on Enceladus. He thinks that might be a better place.
It's the plumes of water, right, that go from Enceladus.
Right. And that means that the liquid that's inside that moon gets squeezed out.
Yeah.
And so a rocket can just sail past the moon, grab some of that stuff, and bring it back to Earth for analysis. So that may be the quickest way to find life in space.
Wow, that's that would be very, very exciting. It's a pity that that they didn't already look there in like previous. I mean, they did check a little bit, right? I think, but from a distance, these plumes of water. Yeah. I mean, they weren't. There wasn't a specific project to go look, and now there could be. Yes. So what is the status right now for people to understand? Because I've been again a big fan of the SETI Institute for many years. So what are the next or what is the SETI Institute doing these days? What is the next thing that you are looking forward towards in this beautiful mission and all the activities of SETI?
Well, as I say, the experiment keeps getting better.
Yes,
we're building new receivers for the Allen telescope array that will help there. Unfortunately, the Arecibo telescope is not looking so good
we've
now.
Seen it.
Yeah. So, that won't be used for SETI maybe ever again. And then, but there are other instruments. There's the Very Large Array in New Mexico, the U.S., and that's going to be used in a sort of piggyback way where we sort of share the telescope with other people for SETI. But also, the Europeans are building the Square Kilometer Array in places like South Africa and in Australia. And that can be used for SETI too. And the Chinese talk about using their big antenna, now the only big antenna left in the world, for SETI as well.
Very interesting. This brings me to two questions, actually. Okay, the first one, there's going to be this new telescope, the one that replaces Hubble. Right, this is going to be launched. What is the name of the one that is going to replace the Hubble telescope?
James Webb.
Yeah, James Webb. So this is going to be launched like in a year or two, right? I mean, is this also going to help in the search for exoplanets and technosignatures in other planets?
Yes, it will, because at least for nearby star systems, it might be able to actually make a picture of a planet around another star. A picture of just one pixel, just a dot. But with that one dot, you can take the light from that dot and put it through a spectroscope and, see if there are things like
I mean,
oxygen or methane or something.
that for me is so fascinating, because I work a lot with media and pixels and stuff, and to think, because I know that you guys analyze the chemical spectrum of blah blah, but that you can do that from such little amount of information is unbelievable. And I guess that gets easier and easier with deep learning and artificial intelligence as well.
Well, yeah. Although you probably don't even need it for that because you know what you're looking for, but
yeah,
and you don't have that huge a data set anyhow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, something that also is very interesting for many people. Years ago, there was, I don't know if it's still active, this SETI at home, SETI home. There was this program where a lot of people from their homes, they could contribute their computing power for the interpretation, for the search in all this data. Now, going beyond, that is the name of this podcast, do you think there will be a time in the future, I guess in the far future, where people from their own homes may be able to search themselves, the sky for signals, will there be a technology that is portable enough in the far future, I guess, that people...
Yeah, I mean, SETI at home was indeed citizen science, so people were able to use their home computers. It's not operating right at the moment. They sort of put it on pause. That was a project of the University of California at Berkeley. But it was quite successful. They had about 7 million people, something like that, doing it. So it was a good citizen science project, and I'm sure they'll do it again. The thing is that citizen science, it sounds like the work is being done by citizens.
Yeah.
That's true. But on the other hand, you still need at least one or two people to run the project.
Yeah.
And so little money for SETI that one or two people is an expensive thing. So
yeah. Well, which brings us to the next question. I mean, what could be done? Because I have been so passionate about the SETI activities since I was little. I mean, what could be done to make more people passionate, right, about this amazing mission? I mean, do you have any ideas? Like what could be done?
Well, I think the public is interested. All you have to do is turn on the television, and you see lots and lots of television shows about SETI. So it is of interest to the public, but SETI does not get any government funding. NASA doesn't do any SETI. NASA spends a lot of money to go to Mars, for example, and to go to other places like, Europa, maybe the atmosphere of Venus, but they don't spend any money in doing SETI. And that's a political thing, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Yeah, that's unfortunate. By the way, talking about Mars, what are your thoughts about, the whole idea of terraforming Mars, of transforming Mars into a habitable environment, and Elon Musk, SpaceX? What do you think about this idea?
Well, it's certainly it's a good project for the weekend. I mean, to terraform Mars, but it's pretty hard, actually.
Sounds hard.
And I've heard estimates that it could take 200 years.
Oh my God.
I don't know if it'll really take 200 years, but even if it only takes 50 years, it's still a big project and an expensive one. So it's not going to happen soon, but I think eventually you could do it. Of course, it doesn't violate physics.
Yeah, it is interesting that there were all of these people that signed up to go to Mars on a one-way journey, just to stay there forever. I guess, well, if nothing else, that proves that a lot of people are very passionate about space and the challenges. Yeah.
Yes.
So now, talking about life in general, and the biggest mystery of life is consciousness. I'm curious to know, what is your position regarding consciousness? We have the people that think that is like a mechanicist view, that is all coming from the neurons, and the people that talk about the panpsychism, that it's something that permeates the universe. Do you have any view about consciousness?
Well, I think I would go to the first explanation more than the second.
Okay.
Some panpsychic phenomena permeating the universe. I'd like to think that has something to do with my consciousness, but I somehow doubt it. It seems to be an emergent property. listen to the neuroscientists, and I'm not a neuroscientist, but if you listen to the neuroscientists, they will tell you that at a certain point you get enough complexity, and then you develop consciousness because it helps you to survive, and so it's selected for. So that's probably what it is, and it's not very good when you think of the behavior of most humans. It's strategies that were evolved 100,000 years ago on the savannas of Africa, which would keep you alive, but which today are probably less useful.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, I also read about this theory that maybe the conscious mind is the necessity to understand the theory of mind of another person. So it's a module that is able to look from the outside. Blah, blah. Yeah, it's super interesting this. Yeah, so going back to astronomy, as the senior astronomer of the SETI Institute, I mean, these days, in general, what are for you within astronomy the most exciting areas, in astronomy today?
Well, obviously, the biggest story since 1995 has been exoplanets.
Yes.
And that's still the case. But I think there are other things. For example, gravitational waves are certainly an interesting new technique that may open up all sorts of parts of astronomy we never saw before. And the other thing that's of interest to me always, because I did some work on this back when I was doing my thesis work, was dark matter.
Oh, I like
dark energy is something newer, but dark matter went back to, we actually found that in 1968, 69. And, the rotation of galaxies was all too fast.
Yes.
And that was mysterious at that time, and I think it's still mysterious.
Yeah.
So that interests me.
Yeah, dark matter, that for the audience, they say it may account for what, like 70% of the matter or more?
Well, not dark matter. Dark matter might be a fourth or a third of all the mass energy.
Dark energy is the one.
Dark energy is bigger,
70%.
but still, there's more dark matter than there is the kind of matter you can see.
Yeah, that is unbelievable. So talking about mysteries, now actually I'm very interested to know your opinion about the simulation hypothesis. There are all these people that think that we may be living in a simulation. What do you think of that theory and the consequences? If we were living in a simulation, what would that mean in terms of SETI as well? This is a beyond question.
Yeah, I don't know what it would mean in terms of SETI, except the idea, and it has been largely advocated by this guy at Oxford, Nick Bostrom.
Yes.
That we're not living in. I mean, this is not reality. What we're doing here. This is all part of a computer simulation being run in a computer, that's won't even be built for another 50 years or whatever.
Yes.
And he said, I talked to him once about this, and he said there was a 20% chance this was true, I think.
20% chance that the simulation was true.
That this is a simulation.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Okay.
And I asked him how he knew that number, and he didn't have a good answer to that. But 20%. But of course, you had the problem that, if this is a simulation, how do you know that the people that wrote the software for the simulation or built the computers in the simulation, maybe that was a simulation?
Yeah.
And then maybe that was a simulation and so forth. So you had this recursive problem.
Yeah.
And he admitted that it was, Bostrom admitted that was a problem.
Yeah.
But he didn't suggest a solution to it. I mean, it's kind of interesting. I asked him actually at the end of the interview, I said, well, Nick, if this is all a simulation, am I obliged to live a moral existence, or can I just have fun?
Oh, interesting.
Because it doesn't matter if it's a simulation, it's just code. And he said, no, I think you should live a moral existence. Wasn't clear why he said that, but that's what he said. I thought that was interesting.
Well, that is super interesting. Actually, it makes me think many times I think of our DNA, right? It's like software. The software of life is like, in a way, right? Everything is information. Everything is like code. So what you just said now, okay, maybe if we are living in a simulation, who cares? Everything is code. But in a way, everything is code. I mean, like we are software and hardware. We're kind of I mean, right? I mean, we could say that we are software.
Yeah, but the question is it software that's being written by our descendants?
Okay.
It's a simulation hypothesis. Our great-great-grandchildren have written the code to bring us back.
Yes. Yeah, so they are playing with the code. Okay, you play whatever you want. We'll do whatever we like in the simulation.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is all this problem of these infinite loops and this recursivity. Yeah, because we always go back, and even in the Big Bang, and now with the theory of Penrose of the infinite universes, right? Of Penrose. But you can never solve the beginning of it all. It's always the problem. This never. It's like it goes beyond our capacity to think, right? Like to think about the infinite in a way.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. We have a great deal of trouble trying to imagine what an infinite universe might mean.
Yeah, infinite in general. So going back to dark matter, what is most intriguing to you about dark matter? Do you think that when we understand what dark matter is, a lot of other things in physics, may change in our understanding?
Well, I don't know. That's hard for me to say. I assume so. I mean, the fact that we haven't been able to find dark matter so far means that there's something about physics we still don't understand, something important. I'm sure there are many things we don't understand. So yeah, I mean, it'll be important. It'll be interesting, but it's a physics problem. And the next question would be, well, okay, how did dark matter get formed? How did the Big Bang make dark matter? That sort of thing. So it'll push the question to another level.
Yeah. Yeah, and in terms of the big obstacle that you talked about at the beginning, the speed of light, that it takes so long to communicate, blah, blah, blah. What is our best hope towards the future? Our rockets, our means of transportation, realistically, in the next 50, 100 years, do you think we will have access to technologies that will allow us to travel way faster in space? Or is that...
Well, it doesn't look terribly promising because going faster requires more energy. Uh-huh. And you can just, we know enough physics to know about how much energy that is, the relativistic equations of energy requirement and all that sort of thing. Now, you have the advantage if you go fast, you don't age as quickly. So you might survive the trip. But if you came back to Earth, you would find that everybody you knew was dead. And that might be a downer. So
that would be. Do we have any hope about the wormholes? You know what they call these holes in space? Is this like a pipe dream, or is it?
Well, nobody knows. I mean, the question is, do wormholes really exist in a way that would allow you to go through them, or are they just an artifact of the mathematics?
Yeah.
And again, I don't know, but I have talked to some physicists who work on this problem. And the one I talked to most recently said he doubted that they could really exist, because if they could, then, some alien would pop up in the chair next to you. And he thought that would be very disconcerting.
Yeah.
So he didn't think that they had physical reality, but, he admits he doesn't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's the same issue than with the UFOs, I always say, okay, if people see so many UFOs, why, it should appear one randomly any of these days around the corner. I mean, if there are so many of them. But anyway, yeah. But so and when you analyze these signals in SETI, one thing that I found very interesting in the past is the way you choose the frequencies that you are analyzing, right? I mean, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that you look for frequencies that are very universal in terms of the chemistry of the universe or something like that, so that other civilizations may be choosing similar frequencies. Is this the case, or is it different?
Well, it certainly was the case for the first several SETI experiments.
Okay.
Trying to guess where on the dial you should listen. And almost all experiments chose what's called the 21 centimeter hydrogen line. So it has a wavelength of 21 centimeter. It's at 1.4 gigahertz on the dial. And that's a frequency that everybody will know. The aliens will know it too,
Yes.
because hydrogen is 3/4 of the universe after all. And so everybody will know that frequency. And as a consequence, if they're actually trying to get in touch with you, they may choose a spot on the dial to broadcast that they know you will have marked on your radio too. So that's the idea. I mean, it seems like a reasonable idea, but it doesn't apply if the aliens are not deliberately broadcasting. They're just broadcasting for their own purposes.
Yeah. They are not on purpose pointing somewhere.
Yes. Yeah, they're not trying to talk to Earthlings.
Very good, very good. Okay, so already moving towards the end of our conversation, I want to go now a bit more, on your life experience. For example, I read that your hobbies include filmmaking, railroading, and computer animation. Right? This is very interesting. So I'm curious about two things. First of all, how did you become interested in SETI at the beginning? Like, I mean, how did you get involved in it? When you were a little kid, whatever. And what about this? All of these other passions that you have, animation and stuff. Tell us a bit about them.
Well, I think the animation came from the same place as the SETI interest, and that was because of the movies I went to as a child. Beginning at age, I guess, 7 or so, 7 or 8, I was going to the movies every weekend with a friend of mine. And there were a lot of science fiction films in those days.
Yeah.
And we by the age of 11, we were making our own science fiction films. They weren't very good. They were, very simple. But, I continued to make movies for a long time. In fact, behind me, I didn't have some equipment I've been using to transfer some of those early films to a digital format.
Wow, so because you were, of course, you had tapes. Yeah.
Well, they're not tapes, they're film. But
film. Like 35 millimeter film, 16 millimeter.
Yeah, these were 16 millimeter, yeah.
Beautiful. 16 millimeter has a beautiful texture, like super beautiful.
Well, it's true, but hardly anybody uses it anymore. But anyhow, I have all these films. In fact, I can show you some of the equipment back there.
Yeah.
Just so you can see it's for real.
Good love to see. Oh, wow, that's amazing.
So you can see.
Yeah, I can see. Oh, that's beautiful.
So I have equipment there that allows me to transfer the film and eventually the sound to a digital format. Yeah, and that was because of the movies I saw.
And you still use it today? Do you still use it today, or just transfer things now?
And I'm just transferring the films. No, when I make stuff today, it's all done on video. It's much faster.
Now in digital. Okay, so you had this passion for the films and the SETI. It was all connected because of the movies. By the way, what do you think about how the movies portrayed, space and astronomical data? Do you think? What do you think about the movie Interstellar? Do you know that movie?
Yes, I do. I think I wrote a review of it for Huffington Post, but it was just too long for me. But but I do. I go to them all, and I actually consult for some movies. I've consulted for maybe half a dozen films.
Fantastic.
But the consultation is simply to assure the. In fact, I have a phone call coming up today with a guy down in Southern California who's trying to produce a film. And they want to get the technology right, whatever that means.
Okay.
But I don't think that matters so much. I mean, nobody walks out of the theater saying, oh, that didn't make any sense scientifically. Nobody cares about that. What they care about is, are there some ideas here? Are the characters interesting? Is the story good? That's what they care about. They care about that it violates the second law of thermodynamics or anything.
Well, but you know what? I'll tell you something. I don't know if you know the Expanse series. The Expanse series. The Expanse series has a huge following. And one thing that I always read in the comments of people, they like the expanse because they say it's very realistic, and all the physics and everything is. So I think the people that are like really fans of science fiction and space, they do appreciate the scientific rigor.
Well, undoubtedly, there's 1 or 2% of the audience that cares.
Yeah, but you're right. It's like a smaller percentage. Yeah. Anyway, so going back to your the animation films and your hobbies, so you were making these movies, and you were doing this. What is railroading? Railroading. It's like
well, I used to work for the railroads, actually.
Oh.
I was very interested in the trains when I was young. Yeah, the U.S. actually has some trains they call high speed. They're not very high speed compared to what you find in Europe or Japan,
yeah.
But by American standards, they're considered high speed. And I used to work for that operation, and I worked for other railroads as well. So that's just an interest of mine.
No, that's beautiful. And that's so through all those movies, it's how you got interested in science and astronomy, right? And SETI, and that's how it all began.
I think so. I also went to a lot of museums when I was a kid because I grew up near Washington, D.C.,
yeah.
And there are a lot of museums in D.C. And my relatives were in New York, and I went to the planetarium in New York, where Neil deGrasse Tyson works now.
Oh, yeah.
The predecessor to that planetarium, yeah. Went there a lot when I was a kid.
That's beautiful. All right, so that's it towards concluding our fascinating trip. Just to conclude, tell us a bit about, for people in the audience that are passionate about astronomy and about the space, and also about SETI, about the search for other intelligent species. Well, first of all, by the way, one thing, Seth also has a podcast. You have a podcast, right?
Yes, it's a podcast and a broadcast, yes.
Okay, tell us about the podcast. If people want to listen to it, how can they do it?
It's general science. It isn't just astronomy, but it's called Big Picture Science. Okay. And all they have to do is go into their browser and type that into their search engine, type it into Google, and they'll find it. They can download it. Or if they're here in the United States, they can actually, it's on 150 stations or something. So they could also listen to it on the air. But the easiest thing to do is just to find it on the web. Big Picture Science.
Big Picture Science. Perfect. And you also wrote some books, right? You've got some books as well.
Yes. Yeah. You just go on to Amazon and look up my name.
Okay, that's perfect. And so then finally, for people who are interested and passionate about SETI and all this search for extraterrestrial intelligence, do you have any advice as to, books or movies or things that they could consult, to follow the mission?
Well, it's easy. I mean, it's like you would follow any other interest of yours. Just get on the web. You can go to the SETI Institute's website. It's just SETI.org. But any Google search on SETI will take you to the places where you can find information. As far as books go, as you mentioned, I've written several, and there are plenty others too. So it's easy to find out. The information is out there. All you have to do is just go looking for it.
All you have to do is look up to the stars. Yes. All right, Seth, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining the spacecraft today. And we'll be following passionately the SETI mission all the time from now on. Thank you so much.
Well, Volandino, thank you so very much for having me.
Thank you, Seth. All the best.
Volandino, where are you? Do you copy?
Sorry, I'm busy.
Reply,
I cannot go back now, sorry.
Let's go, Volandino.
I got something to do.
Where have you gone? I repeat.
Well, I just... because...
Come back, Volandino.
I wanna go beyond. 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 Thank you for following the Beyond podcast. If you enjoy it, subscribe on YouTube and support it in other channels like Patreon and others. And hope to see you soon at the Beyond podcast. Thank you.